Oh, yeah.
How do you
sounds.
do that?
It's up at the top. There's like the
Mm-hmm.
microphone.
It appears when you put your mouse up there.
Okay, so mine says mute microphone. Click on it, or is it good?
Well, if you click on it, it'll mute you to us. But if you unclick
So,
it, then we can hear you. So we should mute ours while you talk.
okay, so you can hear me, right? Oh, we're
Mhm.
live already.
Okay.
Okay. Alrighty. And don't forget to say, should we all say our names probably and then go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Or just during? Doesn't matter.
Just
Okay.
during. Yeah.
That's fine.
Just
Okay.
during?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and start. I'll
Okay.
mute.
Okay. My name is Holly Mortensen. I will be addressing the effects of sex education in schools and how it is affecting our children and families. I am appalled to learn that sex education courses and lessons are starting younger and younger each year in school, and that it is so explicit in its wording with no regard to age appropriateness. I also think parents are taking too many steps back and letting the schools take the lead on this, and making it seem like the choice to abstain from sex isn't even an option. At the moment, the favored approach is called comprehensive sex education. The nation's highest-ranking health officer, Surgeon General Jocelyn Elders, has endorsed this approach as the chief way to reduce unwed childbearing and sexually transmitted diseases among teenagers. What exactly does comprehensive mean in this context? Comprehensive sex education includes much more than a movie about menstruation and a class or two in human reproduction. It begins in kindergarten and continues into high school. It sweeps across disciplines, taking up the biology of reproduction, the psychology of relationships, the sociology of the family, and the sexology of masturbation and massage. It seeks not simply to reduce health risks to teenagers, but also to build self-esteem, prevent sexual abuse, promote respect for all kinds of families, and make little boys more nurturant and little girls more assertive. As Dr. Elders explains, comprehensive sex education is not just about giving children a plumbing lesson. Schools used to only use an abstinence-only approach to sex education, but that has changed significantly over the years. Now abstinence is barely mentioned, if at all. I want you to consider this scenario and think about it throughout my presentation. Say your 8-year-old daughter, or even younger, came home from school one day and asked you about sex and masturbation. She continues to tell you that her school pushes for self-pleasure versus engaging in intercourse because they want to reduce the number of teen pregnancies, and she said her school wants to teach children how to protect themselves. What would you say or do in this situation? Are you okay with the school teaching your children with this message, or would you rather be the one to teach them about this subject according to your own personal and family's values and beliefs? Public opinion is overwhelmingly supportive of sexuality education that goes beyond abstinence. Susan Wilson, who has been a crusader for comprehensive sex education for more than a decade, helped to write and pass the state mandate in the late 1970s. She was also a member of the State Board of Education. A few years later, she took over as the head of the network. She believes that children are sexual from birth. Like many sex educators, Wilson rejects the classic notion that a latency period occurs between the ages of 6 and 12, when children are sexually quiescent. And according to Wilson, it is not simply that children are born sexual or that their sexuality is constantly unfolding. It is also that sexuality is much broader than most imagine. You are not just being sexual by having intercourse, you are being sexual when you throw your arms around your grandpa and give him a hug. I do not agree with this idea because she is making it seem like everything we do is a sexual act. If every time I hugged a child or my own daughter and had those thoughts, I just wouldn't feel right. Toddy Ellis, who was quoted in the newspaper USA Today, said, "More sex education in public schools will not reverse the damaging legacy of the sexual revolution unless the clear message is premarital chastity and marital monogamy. There are many defects in sex education courses. The philosophy behind them is to ridicule chastity, scoff at fidelity, and glamorize sexual adventurism. They teach there is no such thing as right and wrong. 30 years of advocating sexual liberation has brought raging venereal diseases and rampant teenage pregnancy. Most sex education in the public schools morally disarms the students rather than giving them moral sensitivity to help them make the proper sexual choices. Sex education fights the modesty and morality endemic to human life." Another negative effect this comprehensive approach has is the primary reason behind sex is not to bring life into this world, but that most people engage in it because they like it and it's a very important way of showing that we love someone. Sex has taken on a very selfish role in our lives, and now that connotation is being projected onto our children. In Arizona, there was a policy that was trying to get passed, and it was to amend the existing law to allow school districts to provide sex education instruction unless a parent provides written permission for a student to opt out of instruction. It requires that school districts provide sex education that is medically accurate and age and developmentally appropriate in grades kindergarten through 12. It creates additional requirements for sex education, including teaching the benefits of delaying sexual activity and the importance of using effective contraceptives to prevent unintended pregnancy, HIV/AIDS, and other sexually transmitted diseases. Education requirements also include information to support students in developing healthy relationships and skills such as communication, critical thinking, problem solving, and decision making. It requires the Department of Education, among other things, to develop lists of appropriate curricula and create rules for instructor qualifications. And this failed in Arizona. I think this is mostly focused on the individual, and it is addressing the symptoms rather than the problem, because it isn't connecting children with their parents in the sexual aspect. It just teaches what children can do if they find themselves in an unwanted or unplanned pregnancy. The real solution would be to teach children not to even engage in sexual activities, and then they wouldn't have to worry about all the other things that could happen. I believe it undermines and replaces the parents' responsibility in the home, because parents will think that since the schools are teaching about sex, then they don't need to, and that everything is being covered. But what parents don't realize is that their values and beliefs on this matter really do affect their children and teens, and it really does make a difference if a parent willingly sits down with their children to discuss this subject and what they believe is okay to do or not to do. In conclusion, what can be done to improve sex education in schools at the different levels of individual, society, and government? I believe schools need to go back to the abstinence-only approach, because when they provide other options such as condoms, morning after pills, abortion, masturbation, etc., children and teens will take those options, and it won't teach them anything about abstinence, morality, or chastity. This may not be very ideal or realistic, but if our society was to promote abstinence instead of sexual exploring, there would be less teen pregnancies and sexually transmitted diseases. I think the government, or at least the state governments, should pass a law that states parents get to preview the material that will be shown and taught to their children, and if they disagree with it for any reason, they can opt their children out. I think the problem is that most parents don't even know when their children are being taught sex education in their school. There needs to be several ways in which the parents should be notified. And that's the end. Let's have some questions.
I have a question. Sorry, I'm thinking how to formulate it. There are a lot of families out there who are not connected to each other, just to begin with. You know, kids who have abusive parents or alcoholic parents or are dealing with their own problems. How would you suggest that we deal with those kind of families? Because I feel like those families are becoming the majority instead of the minority, and that kids need to learn it from somewhere. Yeah. And they are more at risk as well, so they're more likely to be sexually active. And so shouldn't we teach those kids, shouldn't the schools teach those kids how to be safe when they are sexually active? Because, I mean, if we were going to be realistic, they're very likely to engage in it, whether we preach abstinence or not.
I agree. Yeah, I think that the schools are teaching safe practices for those, but I don't know. For some parents, they don't want their kids to even know about those. You know, like they want them to just not do it at all. But yeah, in those instances, I think it's at least better for them to learn from the schools than from nobody. You know. So yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, so my question is, why are we so, like, back in the day we didn't have to teach sex ed? What is happening in society that's causing us to need this? You know, why in kindergarten are we having to teach our children about sex? What's happening in our society, you think, that's created that?
One thing I think is that we have become really self-focused and we want what we want. I don't know. I don't know. I think that it's just become what I want and doesn't matter really. I don't know how to put it. I don't know. Just that our society has changed in how we think, and we're not really concerned about others. We're more concerned about ourselves and what we need or want, and it's just starting younger and younger.
Yeah.
If I really answered your question, but that's kind of what I think. But.
You did good.
Well, I think one of the sorry, I totally agree with you, but the assignment says for me to be the opposition, so that's what I'm doing. I think one of the reasons that they're wanting to start so young is because we're surrounded by it, and it's in the media, it's just everywhere, and so shouldn't we start young because the kids are going to see it anyway? And again, I definitely personally also am not necessarily for parents wanting their kids to know nothing about it. I don't think that's very healthy either. But I think there are many parents who aren't comfortable discussing things with their kids and maybe don't understand that we are possibly hitting a time where starting young needs to happen. Because, I mean, with cell phones and technology, they get exposed to things. And so I definitely think there's a dialogue. So I guess thinking about that, what would be a better situation than than the curriculum that they're trying to implement right now? Thinking about that maybe it is important to start early.
No, I agree. I think parents need to be open and stuff, and kids are hitting puberty younger too. So, I mean, that's also an issue of, they need to learn about their bodies. So I don't know. I think parents should kind of open it up to them first, to their kids, instead of them learning about it from school. And I think it's really important for the parents to really put in their beliefs about it and their values on what they agree with and what they don't, so their children know. So when they do learn this stuff from the school, they know that that's not really an option for them, if based on what their parents believe. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. All right.
Forgot I was muted. Do you want me to go now?
Sure, I'll mute.
Is that all right? Okay. All right. So the topic that I have discussed and chosen to talk about is pornography and the rampant, that it is becoming across our society. Frank Sinatra gave a song that was really, really popular in 1955. He said, love and marriage, go together like a horse and carriage. This I tell you, you can't have one without the other. And in 1955, many people believed this song, that you can't have love without being married. In essence, you can't be with one person, like love is that commitment. Okay, love is commitment. About 60 years later, the same song and lyrics are well known. A lot of people still hear that song, but the idea behind love and marriage seem to have changed. Today's society teaches that pornography is the norm and that another human being is not needed for sexual fulfillment. Pornography is viewed in everything from commercials, apps, movies, social media sites, conversations, and much more. A recent study of 813 university students from 6 different schools so there's a study done with all of them, and they found out that astonishing 87% of men said they viewed pornography regularly, and 31% of women reported this viewing it. This is not a problem facing just a few people. Like generations ago, it was hard to seek out pornography and to find it, but now it's being blown in our faces. Pornography is commercialized as being more and better sex to your life, but the reality is the exact opposite happens. Those who view pornography are significantly less happy with their partners and their sexual performance. Pornography is not real women with real flaws. So with the distorted view, one can become less satisfied with reality. The fantasy that you can view pornography and still have a real human intimate relationship is not the case. Pornography inhibits the ability to offer unselfish love to another individual, causing hurt and pain in many relationships. Pornography is addictive. It creates pathways in your brain that makes you desire more and more of it. We need to stand up to pornography. We cannot let it have a place in our lives and in our relationships. The film industry has laid their videos with pornographic images. We must understand the destructiveness of pornography and turn away from those images and not support those companies that are distorting the meaning of love. Food commercials have turned to pornography as well to sell their products. The problem with this is that our society doesn't see it as a problem. They think it's you and the computer. You're not hurting anybody, and so there are not very many laws and regulations governing pornography. It's kind of you're willing and you're able to view what you want. But 3 out of 5 marriages end in divorce because they're connected to pornography. So this isn't just an individual person. It's affecting families, and it's affecting even being able to have your own intimate, real relationship. One program, due to the lack of government agencies supporting it, that I have come to really love and respect is called Porn Kills Love. And it's a movement to help people understand that pornography really does destroy true love. It messes with the person's ability to connect with a real individual and to have those real needs fulfilled. So in this movement and in this website, they teach about how destructive pornography is and the principles that are misleading in the concept. And what I want to do, and I would love to have the government back this up, is they do sex education like we just learned. Why don't they take pornography, anti-pornography classes and teach these children what pornography is? I feel like people are going in and getting trapped into pornography because it's addictive, having no idea the harm that it connects. A little, 8-year-old sees an image, it creates some feelings, and therefore they're attached to this new concept, never knowing what true love really means. So this program and this society needs to go into schools, and they need to advocate for against pornography, and let us know what truly is hurting us. And as we do this, then the kids will be able to grow up when they see those images knowing they're incorrect. Another aspect and program that I know of is called Router Limits, and and there's other programs like it, but it's where you go in and it limits your internet, and so it blocks the pornography from coming through. And I feel that if the government would do that more on a basic level, then it would be able to protect so many families and exploitation of children and women. And I know as we seek to set up these barriers through protecting the internet and educating those individuals in school, we can come together as families and as a community and be able to create and enjoy the true love that is talked about in Frank Sinatra's song, that we can have true love and have those fulfilling relationships with real people in our lives, with the people that we truly love. There we go. Any questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
As far as I think a big part of this country is learning to govern ourselves. And I guess my question is what would you say to those people who believe that the government really shouldn't play a part in this, that it's really your individual choice about whether you engage in pornography or not, and that it's kind of your own and your family's problem? I guess why do you think the government needs to get involved instead of letting people govern themselves?
Okay. This is the problem with pornography that drives me crazy. Is what the world believes that drugs are bad. They believe that heroin's bad. Why step in? Why step in when heroin is your choice? Why? Because we know that it is bad. We know that it is destructive to our society. pornography research is showing it's destructive to our society. So just like we can't let people have freedom of drugs, freedom of stealing because they want that, unfortunately, people aren't protecting themselves. Like, they're not choosing to be obedient and to do what is best. So laws do have to go in to protect other people. So the initiative Porn Kill Love says it's the new drug, and I strongly believe that because it's addictive. And so that is why I think the government has to step in, is because people are not doing it and other people are suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, a little passionate.
Okay. I have a question. So, say you know someone who is addicted to pornography. And just like you said, it's an addiction. How do you show them that they are addicted to it? Because sometimes they can't see that, you know.
Yeah.
How do you get them to realize that it's a problem in their lives and it's destroying them and their family?
Do you know what's so amazing about this Porn Kills Love campaign? And if you haven't dug into it, dig into it. Like, I have learned more than I want to know, but it explains that, like, why pornography is destructive and how it's misleading. And so you talk to these people and you say, okay, this is your excuse why it's not hurting you and you feel fine, but when you read these things to them, they can see the connection, go, you know what, that is somewhere I've been deceived. That is somewhere I feel like I have thought I was okay and I'm not. And I think if you don't have a pornography problem, you might not understand that, but the Porn Kills Love is an amazing campaign because they have researched what it is with people who have really struggled. So you go to these sites and you bring up these little points and you say, do you feel this way? And it kind of like hits a home for them and lets them know, you know what, I have been deceived thinking I can have pornography in my life and still have a fulfilling relationship, but I do see how it's degrading and eroding my life. So that's what I would say.
Awesome.
Alrighty.
All right.
Go ahead.
Oh, are we done? Is it my turn or are we still doing?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. My name is Leah Mon, and I wanted to speak to you today about the problem of family involvement in the state correctional system. In a study done in 2013 by Glaze and Herbermann, it was found that over 6 million individuals were incarcerated or under some type of judicial supervision, including parole, probation, and pre-release. In 2012, this means more than 6 million families have a family member involved in the correctional system. This is also the highest rate globally. I chose this topic because it is very personal. I grew up in a seemingly stable home. We were your average American family. My mom worked for the state and my dad was a stockbroker. However, when my sister and I were in high school, all this drastically changed. My dad was arrested for fraud. He was sentenced to 30 years with 20 years suspended, for a total of 10 years in prison. He is now out on parole after serving 5 of those 10 years. My dad is a 69-year-old Vietnam veteran. He is also a convicted felon. My family was completely devastated and traumatized. Adding to this trauma was the confusion and disorganization of the justice system. We often ran into problems when it came to connecting with my father. As a child of an inmate, I would try to send letters that often got returned for not following strict rules. For example, I drew a dinosaur to make my dad laugh. The letter was returned because drawings weren't allowed. I couldn't send him pictures when I wanted to because he was only allowed to have a certain number and he didn't want to throw any of my old pictures away. I couldn't send him my graduation announcement because it was not on a plain piece of paper, and he couldn't receive my wedding invitation. Visitation was a whole other challenge. I had to drive 4 hours to get to the prison. If you came in during count, which was a time where they account for all the inmates, they would not let you in. Often, they don't let you in due to disorganization of records. I distinctly remember when I was 16 and my older sister took me to visit. I had to go with her because I was under 18. My mom didn't want to visit my dad at this time, so it was up to my 18-year-old sister to escort me. We spent months jumping through the bureaucratic process to get approval, and finally it was granted. We arrived excited and nervous with the required paperwork. After all of our efforts, they still wouldn't let us in. I broke down and sobbed while my sister called my mother. Now, I am blessed because my mother works for the state and has access to information and contact points. She got on the phone with the guard, talked to the supervisors, and wouldn't take no for an answer. Finally, they allowed us in after 2 hours. The majority of families don't have the resources that my family has. They don't know how to navigate the system or know who to call when the system breaks down. So, you can imagine what other families go through when trying to visit. These are just a few of the problems my family experienced. I won't take the time to go into the challenges of putting my husband on the visitation list. I also won't take the time to address problems with phone calls, getting money to inmates for hygiene items, and the parole process that hurt my family. I can, however, attest to the fear that a child has for their parent when they are incarcerated. For example, my father was not receiving adequate medical care. He broke his nose and fractured his face because he fell off the top bunk of his prison cell, which he was assigned to. My dad is older and should not have been assigned to a metal top bunk that required climbing on a desk to get into. His nose never got properly reset. He now has a very flat, crooked nose. It was traumatic for me to worry about the well-being of my father in prison, and it was painful. I am also not alone in this pain. 2.7 million children in the U.S. have at least one parent serving in prison. These stats come from the National Resource Center. Now, I can sit here all day and point out problems I haven't even mentioned. The bottom line is the families of incarcerated individuals need help and support, especially if we are to have successful reentry for families. Research has shown that family support and visitation is vital when it comes to successful reentry, and it even helps with inmate conduct inside the prison. However, as outlined in my personal story, keeping in contact with inmate loved ones and visitation is extremely difficult and more painful than needed. Again, the National Resource Center reported that in 2014, 59% of fathers and 58% of mothers of minor children had no personal visits from any of their children. 62% of parents in state prisons and 84% of parents in federal prisons are held over 100 miles away from their residence. 43% of parents in federal prisons are held over 500 miles away from their last residence. We need to provide ways that families can visit their loved ones and consider the impact of family accessibility when choosing where the inmates are sent. There is an alarming lack of policies and laws when it comes to family support and addressing the issues I just outlined. There is an acute shortage of laws in the state of Montana. There have been attempts in Montana for family advocacy by community members, but they are private groups that come from the grassroots. For example, my mother started an advocacy group called Friends and Families Matter. They have been supporting legislation that provides changes in policies that help inmates and thus help family members feel more secure about their loved ones' treatment and legal process. Previously, the work of Friends and Families Matter resulted in the addition to the Sentencing Commission of Montana. The commission now requires a previous inmate or family member of an inmate to fill a seat on the commission. Friends and Families Matter is also currently looking for a legislator that will carry a bill that establishes a family coordinator in the Department of Corrections. The bill would outline the duties of the family coordinator, which would include a family orientation about the correctional system and process. Through their important work, they are successfully pushing for the corrections system to become more family-friendly. They are extremely family-focused with the understanding that if they improve the situation for inmates, they also improve family comfort and involvement. They are addressing the problem head-on by supporting and engaging in advocacy on the state level. As you can see, there is a major problem when it comes to the Montana State Correction System and families. The Montana correctional system is not unique when it comes to other state systems. There is just a general lack of any real family resources. What needs to be done might seem like a daunting task, but it can start with simply forming a family coordinator position and supporting bills that allow for a more streamlined sentencing, visitation, and parole process that keeps the family involved. If we want recidivism rates to go down, we need to be sure that we have resources in place for families that encourage family healing healing, and unity. We can ensure that visitation and inmate welfare policies are being enforced and supervised, while making sure sentencing lengths are balanced and alternatives to prison are represented. All of these changes, either directly or indirectly, allow the family to rebuild their relationships. I know that if we work together and support groups, such as Friends and Families Matter, we can eliminate the problem and heal families broken by incarceration. Thank you. All right, Q&A.
All right, I have a question. So, why do you think that they make it so hard for families to send stuff and to visit? I mean, wouldn't you think that by allowing them to have still have a good relationship with their family members, that they would be on better behavior and would want to get out sooner? Like, I would think it would be a positive thing.
Right. In my personal experience, what they tell us is a security problem, which is kind of ironic because they don't realize that they'd be helping the security by allowing visitation. They search us before we go in, which honestly I agree with. People do bring stuff in that they shouldn't bring in, but you know, they cite security reasons, but the truth is there are policies and there are rules to, at least in the state of Montana, there are policies on the books about visitation, but they're not getting enforced. And I think a lot of it also has to do with the caseload. There's not enough people to work through the visitation paperwork, so it takes longer. It took me 6 months to be able to visit my dad because my paperwork wasn't being submitted. And it's only supposed to take 30 days. And I really do believe it's a lack of resources. We're not funding our workers. We're not hiring people who are trained at all. A lot of them just come right out of high school and just go to security training. They're not trained about how to de-escalate situations. So I do think it's mainly a lack of resources, and then they blame it on security.
Okay. That's sad, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's really sad.
Yeah, I wonder, you know, whenever I work with government agencies, I feel like they are very unorganized. And I feel like that yes, things cost money, but did you feel like there was too many people or wasted resources, or do you think that you could, because I see the importance of having security, you know, like you said, I watch you. Is there something that could be done? Do you feel like that would simplify the process and make it still just as secure without having, like, is it just wasted complicatedness, or is it unorganized, or what is the, would you say that would be the one thing? Is it better workers, less workers, better technology?
I think it would be the organization, and I think the Friends and Families Matter, what they proposed in Montana, a family coordinator for the Department of Corrections, and I think that coordinator, whose sole job is to work with the family, work with the visitation paperwork, and make sure the family knows what's going on and what needs to happen, and then communicate that to the prisons and the correctional system, I think that would solve a lot of the issues. And that way, families, I mean, I was really blessed because my mom knew who to call, as I said. She knew who to call and she, you know, she wasn't taking no for an answer. If you had a regular, I guess, civilian person in my situation, they wouldn't know who to call. They would be saying, oh, they said no, you know, then that means it's a definite no. And they wouldn't be able to do it, and it's traumatic. When you are losing a family member to that, you're already traumatized by their betrayal and what they did, and then this only traumatizes you further. So having one person that somebody can call and say, hey, I couldn't get in today and they told me I could, what do I do? Or, hey, I really I'm worried about my dad, he fell off the bed and his nose didn't get reset, and why was he on the top bunk to begin with when he's a 69-year-old man? You know, somebody to talk to and express how the family and express our feelings, I think would really help. It's not so much more about maybe the resources. I understand why there's a resource problem and more workers and stuff. I think it's about just understanding that the family members are victims too, and they deserve respect, and they deserve a place for people to express their concerns, somebody to work with them. So I really think the family coordinator, to answer your question, a family coordinator would really solve a lot of those problems, or at least start in the right direction.
Know both sides of the situation.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Did good.
Good job.
You guys did
Okay,
good.
so I'm going to stop this.